Hey Kuba, how you doing?
Hey Jesse, pretty good, but things could have been better. So I'm working on deployment of DNA Center for one of our customers. We've
Mhm.
installed the device, the appliance, but you know how it is. They have different problem in the network, and they want me to focus on troubleshooting that problem now, and I don't know really how to start. I got very vague description of the problem. So some applications are performing bad,
Hmm.
and to make it more fun, those applications are performing bad now and then. So really, I don't know what to do. First thing that came to my mind is to run the span in the
Mm.
network for
Hmm.
a while, and then analyze the captures and look for some anomalies like reset connections or something like that. But that will be a quite huge packet capture, so I'm not sure if that's the way to go. Maybe you can help me a little bit with this and advise what are my options in this case.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, you could always go that route. It's not a bad one, but I've never been a huge fan of looking through that big of a packet capture, trying to find the specific application that's having specific intermittent issues, especially. Let's see if we can find a different one. You said you were doing the DNA Center install though. So if we've got that
Yeah.
installed, have you heard of the application visibility feature in DNA Center?
Yes, I did, but to be honest, I didn't have a chance to turn it on or even see it in action. So
Okay.
what is it about?
Well, it's exactly about what you're having an issue with. Application visibility is all about looking at each application running through your network and specifically how is that application doing from a health perspective. Same way Cisco DNA Center can analyze the health of clients or devices, it can monitor the health of applications and make sure that they're performing properly. Here, how about I
Okay.
share my screen and I'll show you a lab that already has it configured so you can see what it would do.
Yes, I was about to ask you to show me something to be more um, realistic.
Sure. All right, so this is my DNA center. Let me go ahead and log into it and we can take a look around. Now, like I said, application visibility is a assurance feature, which means once we get into Cisco DNA Center, first thing we're going to want to do, head over to the assurance section, and I'm going to start just by looking at the health dashboard. Pretty standard. This is where we get the health of our overall network. But if you
Okay.
notice, up at the top, we actually have an application health dashboard where instead of seeing specific network devices, we
Oh,
see specific applications. And we can see how are the applications doing, good, fair, or poor, and usage
okay.
information, all kinds of stuff about that. And if we scroll down, I'm
Can
going to
I
just show,
actually
yep.
can I stop you for a while over here because this looks very, very interesting. So I know that over here I see Microsoft Office 365 as one of the applications,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they are also mainly using same Office suite. So that looks very promising.
Yeah. So here, let me filter it by poor. And as we said, Office 365 is one of the two applications that's poor in mind. And what application visibility gives us is usage and throughput statistics, which are nice, but more importantly, packet loss, latency, and jitter. And this is usually the ones that, depending on the application type, are going to be causing bad connections or
Mhm.
customer complaints about it not behaving well.
That's quite a lot of information, and it indeed will help me narrow down the problem. Okay, can
Now,
we
you
go
said this
deeper?
was a intermittent problem, though, right?
Yes. Yes, that's the big challenge.
Well, great thing about Cisco DNA Center is it's doing this constantly and passively. So I just clicked on Office 365 so that we can get the application 360 view. By default, I can see how the application's been doing for the last 24 hours, but just like anything else, I can broaden this out to 7 days. I can view any 7-day window at a time, but Cisco DNA Center does keep this information for longer. If you've got any version of Cisco DNA Center, you'll keep it for 14 days. If you have the latest ones, the 2.1 or 2.2 versions, it's actually going to be keeping it for closer to a month, which means intermittent issues, not really a problem. We can look at that.
That sounds very, very promising. Okay, what else is here?
Well, we can actually see it. How is the application doing from the client to the router, or from the router out to the server itself? So if we notice, the packet loss is actually occurring really right on the router. Latency to the application through the server, that's fine. That's not really our issue at all. So that's pointing to, I hate to say it, an issue in the network itself, actually.
Can I troubleshoot this even deeper?
Of course. So we're also able to view how is the application doing on each of the exporters. So each of the routers that this application is running through, we can see how it's doing there. If I scroll all the way to the bottom, I can actually see each individual user that's using it. So with this, I can see nobody's having a good time with this application. It's not specific to any specific user. Both of them, in this case, are running into issues. And looking at the metrics, it's pretty constant. The jitter is pretty standard. The packet loss is sitting right at about 4% all the time, which means in my lab, this isn't an intermittent issue. This is a constant issue. And it seems to be related directly to my WAN Edge 1 device. So next thing I can do is head into device 360 and take a look at that WAN Edge itself. This is, you can jump from different aspects of Cisco DNA Center really fluidly so that you can keep troubleshooting just wherever it may take you. We looked at the clients. It wasn't the clients, it was probably the device. So now we can pop over to the device.
Okay, Jesse, this looks very promising, but tell me, what are the requirements for application visibility to work?
Well, thankfully, the requirements aren't too bad. Let me jump over to the user guide, and we can take a look at them together. First off, we've got, here we are. First off, we've got the hardware requirements. This is supported on the Catalyst 9K switches, any iOS XE router, and the Catalyst 9800 wireless LAN controller. So as long as they've got those hardware, we're in good shape.
Okay. Can you pause here for a second? Let me double check. So in this particular environment, we have Catalyst 9300 as an access layer. So that is a match. We also have Catalyst 9800 as a wireless LAN controller, but it's not yet fully configured. And the software version on our switches, if I remember correctly, it's one of the latest releases of the 16. Something train. So this looks good. Okay, so this is a check.
Yep.
We should
now,
be good.
one quick caveat that I want to call out is for the switches, we can enable application visibility, which is going to give us some of the information. But for a lot of the more deep dive information, like the latency and jitter, we are going to need it to be on a iOS XE router. That's the application experience section. But even with just the switches, the application visibility is some great information. And yeah, the requirements, not too bad. 16.3 or 16.10 minimum for the switches and routers.
Okay.
Now, once we meet the requirements, enabling it is pretty darn simple. The only things we need to do to enable it is we need to configure Cisco DNA Center as a NetFlow collector, and we need to enable application telemetry. That's 2 steps, and both steps, DNA Center does most of the work for you.
Okay.
The catch is, what version of Cisco DNA Center are you installing?
This is something that I wanted to ask you. So currently, the version that we are running is 2.1.2 something. Is this enough to enable application visibility with the way you've described it?
Yeah. So everything up until this point applies to any version of Cisco DNA Center. When we actually enable telemetry, there's 2 different methods of enabling it. One can only be done on versions 2.1 and up, and the other can be done on any version of Cisco DNA Center. So the one that applies to all versions is you actually go into the routers or the switches and you configure the LAN keyword on any interface that you want to enable application telemetry on. They're usually the interfaces that are not the WAN links are the ones that you're going to be enabling it on.
This doesn't sound appealing to configure manually this LAN keyword on all of the interfaces.
Yeah, I mean, if you go through it with a template properly, it's not very hard, but yeah, it's not the most automated of methods, which is why I was asking what version. Because if you're on the 2.x versions, we can use the automatic selection algorithm, where instead, it will go ahead and automatically apply it to any non-WAN, non-management interface. So every interface that we would want to enable it on, it'll go ahead and do it for you. And that's this automatic selection algorithm you're seeing. So as long as it's a physical interface, it's an access port, and it's not a management one, then the switch will go ahead and enable it. And if it's a router, as long as it's not a WAN or a loopback or a management interface, it'll go ahead and enable it automatically for you.
Okay. I will believe it if I see it with my own eyes.
Of course. Yeah, no, I'm the same way.
If you have some time now, we can go and try to turn it on in the setup that I'm working on.
Of course. Let me go ahead and stop sharing. Go ahead and share your screen. We'll take a look at it together.
Okay, just give me a second. Sharing the screen now. I hope you can see it.
Yep, perfect.
This is my DNA Center. And what do I do now?
All right, so first thing we have to do is configure Cisco DNA Center as a NetFlow collector. So yeah, we'll hit the icon up there. We'll go to the design section. We'll go to network settings.
Network settings, okay.
Now in 2.x, there is a telemetry section up the top, which is where all of the telemetry settings are stored, which makes it super convenient. Because it's in network settings, we actually are able to use the hierarchy. So we can configure these telemetry settings globally, or we can actually change them per location. What we want to
actually, sorry to interrupt. Actually, I would like to do it only on this specific site in Slovakia, since this is the environment that I'm allowed to do changes in. So, okay.
All right. So once we select Slovakia, all we want to do, and actually it's already there, is we want to make sure that NetFlow is configured to use Cisco DNA Center as a NetFlow collector server exactly right. As long as that box is checked and we hit save, we're in good shape.
I wasn't sure what is this about, but I just clicked it. It was there in the config guide, so I just did it. So I was just lucky. Okay, so we have, this is done. What's the next step?
All right, well, the next step is we'll need to actually configure the switches themselves. So if we go back into the menu and we head over to the provision section, we can get to the device inventory. Yep. And we've got to do two steps here. The first is we need to assign the device to a site. That's because, as I said, the telemetry settings are actually tied to the device site. They're not global settings necessarily, which means once we assign the device to the site, that's where it's going to be configuring Cisco DNA Center as the NetFlow collector. So select whichever device we're going to be using. Perfect. And then go to the action section at the top and go to provision. And we'll be able to hit assign device to site.
Okay, assign device to site. Clicking it. And I'm guessing I need to pick this site. So I would like to assign it to Slovakia, Bratislava, and building VTS1.
Perfect.
Let me save it. I assume I need to click next.
Yep.
This is the summary view.
Yep. And this is where we can
go.
confirm. Exactly right. We want to make sure that DNA Center is the NetFlow collector.
Okay. Do you mind if I go on the device and we monitor what is happening with this device?
Of course. Yeah. Let's take a look.
So this is my device. Let me turn on terminal monitor.
Okay.
We see what will be happening there. And this will verify if what you are saying is true. So fingers crossed for you, Jesse.
Yep. Go ahead. Hit assign and let's see what it does. Okay. So at this point, it's going to be pushing out a bunch of stuff. This is configuring the SNMP, the NetFlow settings, the certificates, everything that Cisco DNA Center needs from an assurance perspective. We had wire device tracking enabled, which means it's also pushing out IP device tracking. We could have unchecked that box, though, and not turned on IPDT.
Okay, so for this IP device tracking, just to recap, I can define a check or uncheck it so it's not configured by DNA Center. Is that right?
Exactly right. Same place where we checked the NetFlow collector box, we could have unchecked the wire device tracking box.
Okay.
All right. So at this point, Cisco DNA Center has been configured as a NetFlow collector, but we haven't actually turned on application visibility yet. That's a separate step. So the last step is we got to select that box again, or the device again, go to Actions, go to Telemetry this time around, and hit Enable Application Telemetry.
Okay, let me do that. Click.
And you're done.
Let's see what's happening. Okay, so we are pushing flow monitor on all of the interfaces in this environment. Quite a lot of commands. Indeed, it would be quite difficult to do it manually. And there's one thing that I'm realizing just now. I push configure so many functionalities on this switch, yet I haven't executed a single command. Perhaps one, the terminal monitor, and that's it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and beyond that, it's not that it just pushed it out to every single interface, which you could have done fairly easily. There was logic to it. It checked each of those interfaces, and it made sure that this is an interface that we should have Flow Monitor enabled on. So in order to do this yourself, you would have had to actually check each interface individually and made sure that this was an interface that was a good one to enable it on. So yeah, this made your life a lot easier.
Okay, so let me check what.
Yeah, at this point, there's nothing else that needs to be done. We just got to give it a bit of time and let the data start coming in, and then we'll be able to take a look.
Okay, actually looking at the time, it's after 4 and it's Friday. There's actually no one in the office right now, so there will be no user traffic flowing through this network at this point of time. Also, the nature of the problem is intermittent, so it's not happening every day. It's happening now and then at what looks to be random days. So we will need to give it at least 1 week to collect data and to see the performance of the application over a period of time to spot some patterns. But this looks much better than running packet captures randomly on this and that port and spending hours analyzing those packet captures. So I really appreciate this. I didn't knew that it's so easy. It took us 10 minutes, even less, to turn it on. And the same workflow applies to all of the devices. So I can just select them all, assign to the site, and enable telemetry.
Yep.
So this looks very promising. Okay, Jesse, thank you for help today. I really appreciate this, and I owe you.
Not a problem, man. I'll talk to you later, though. Have a good day. Have a great weekend.
You too. See ya.
Bye.
Okay, take 3 of Application Visibility Coffee Podcast. Kuba and Jesse.
Hey, Kuba. How you doing today?
Hey, Jesse. Pretty good, but things could have been better.
You and your loved ones are safe and healthy. Let me know if I can help with something.
Just unplug. Come on, Google. All right. Hold on. Let me